There's this weird shift that happens somewhere between your late 20s and early 30s. And most people don't see it coming. You wake up one day and realize the financial decisions that felt exciting at 24 now feel reckless at 34. And the choices that seemed boring or even stupid back then suddenly feel like the smartest thing you could possibly do. It's not that you sold out. It's not that you got old or lost your edge. It's that the entire game changed underneath you, and nobody told you the rules were different now. So, let me explain what actually shifts between your 20s and your 30s when it comes to money. Because understanding this might be the difference between building something real and wasting a decade chasing the wrong strategy. Let's start with your 20s, because that's where most of the confusion begins. When you're 24, 25, maybe 27, the world tells you to be flexible. Stay mobile. Keep your options open. Don't get locked into anything too early because you don't know what you want yet. And that's actually true. So you rent instead of buy. You switch jobs every 18 months, chasing better titles and salary bumps. You freelance, you pivot, you experiment. And financially, this makes total sense because your earning potential is still climbing fast. Your next job might pay 20% more. Your next career move might double your income. Committing to a mortgage when you might relocate in a year? That's not just risky, it's inefficient. Staying at a company that's underpaying you because you're loyal? That's leaving money on the table. Your 20s are about maximizing income growth, not stability. And the people who treat their 20s like their 40s, the ones who settle too early, buy houses they can't afford yet, or stay in dead-end jobs because it feels safe, they often regret it later. But here's where it gets interesting. Somewhere around 30, 32, maybe 35, the math starts changing. And it's not obvious at first. It creeps up on you. You start noticing that job hopping doesn't feel as exciting anymore. The thrill of a new company, new team, new laptop, it fades. You realize you've onboarded 7 times in 5 years, and you're tired of proving yourself over and over to people who don't know what you're capable of. You also start noticing that rent increases every single year, and you've paid someone else's mortgage for a decade now. You've moved 4 times. You don't have roots anywhere. And maybe that felt like freedom at 25. But at 33, it just feels exhausting. This is the shift. And it's not about age. It's about time horizon. See, in your 20s, your time horizon is short. You're thinking 1 to 3 years ahead max. What job do I want next year? Where do I want to live in 2 years? What skills should I build now to set up my next move? Short time horizons reward flexibility. They reward risk. They reward movement. But in your 30s, something fundamental changes. Your time horizon stretches out. You start thinking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead. And when you're thinking that far out, the optimal strategy flips completely. Suddenly, stability isn't boring, it's compounding. Staying at one company for 5 years and climbing internally starts to make more sense than jumping ship every 18 months. Because now you're not just chasing salary, you're thinking about equity, about reputation, about becoming the person people trust with bigger projects. Buying a house, which felt like a trap at 25, starts looking like leverage. Because if you're going to be somewhere for the next decade anyway, paying down a mortgage builds equity. Renting for another 10 years just transfers wealth to someone else. This isn't about conformity. It's about math and psychology. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine 2 people, both 24, both making $50,000 a year. Person A rents a cheap apartment, switches jobs every 2 years, increases their salary aggressively. By 30, they're making $90,000. By 35, they're making $120,000. They're killing it on income growth. Person B also rents at first, but at 28, they buy a modest house. They stay at the same company, get promoted internally, and by 35, they're making $100,000, slightly less than Person A. On paper, Person A won, right? Higher salary. But here's what you don't see. Person B has been paying down a mortgage for 7 years. They've built $100,000 in home equity. Their monthly housing cost is fixed. Person A is still renting, and rent has gone up 40% in that same time frame. Person B also has deep relationships at work. They're the go-to person for major projects. They have leverage for promotions, bonuses, maybe even equity if the company goes public. Person A is excellent at interviewing and negotiating, but they're always the new person. They've never stayed long enough to see the long-term rewards. Who's actually better off? It depends. And that's the point. In your 20s, Person A's strategy is often smarter. In your 30s, Person B's strategy starts compounding in ways that aren't immediately visible, but become massive over time. Here's the psychological part that nobody talks about. Your 20s are supposed to feel chaotic. You're supposed to be figuring things out. And financially, chaos is actually useful because it forces you to adapt, to learn, to take risks you won't take later. But your 30s are when you start realizing that chaos has a cost. It's not just financial, it's emotional. Constantly moving, constantly starting over, constantly being the new person, it's draining. At some point, you want to invest in something that builds over time. A home, a career, a community. Relationships that deepen instead of reset every 2 years. And this is where people get stuck. Because the culture still celebrates the 20-something mindset. Hustle, flexibility, freedom. And those are good things. But if you're still operating that way at 35, you might look around and realize you've been running in place. You've made more money, sure, but you haven't built anything that lasts. So what does this actually mean for you? If you're in your 20s, don't rush into commitments that lock you down too early. Rent if it gives you flexibility. Switch jobs if it accelerates your income. Experiment. Learn. Build skills. This is the time to take risks because the cost of failure is low and the upside is high. But if you're in your 30s, start asking different questions. Where do I actually want to be in 5 years? Not where sounds cool, but where do I want to wake up, go to work, spend my weekends? What would it look like to stop chasing the next thing and start deepening the thing I'm already doing? If I bought a place and stayed here, what would that free up mentally and financially? These aren't boring questions. They're the questions that lead to actual wealth, actual stability, actual peace of mind. Because here's the truth. Your 20s are about earning potential. Your 30s are about compound potential. Earning potential is how much you can make per year. Compound potential is what happens when you make good decisions and let time do the heavy lifting. A house you buy at 29 and live in until 40 becomes a massive asset. A career you commit to at 30 and grow within becomes a source of deep expertise and income security. Investments you start at 32 and don't touch for 20 years become retirement. But none of that works if you're still thinking in one-year increments. So if you're somewhere in that transition, if you're feeling the pull between the freedom of your 20s and the structure of your 30s, just know this. You're not selling out. You're not getting boring. You're not giving up. You're just playing a different game now. And the people who win in their 30s and beyond are the ones who recognize that the strategy that got them here won't get them there. Renting made sense at 24. Buying might make sense now. Job hopping made sense then. Staying and building might make sense now. It's not about right or wrong. It's about what serves you at this stage of your life. And the smartest thing you can do is be honest about where you actually are, not where you think you should be. Because financial decisions aren't just about money. They're about time, energy, and what kind of life you're trying to build. And that changes. It's supposed to.